30 years ago today, on September 17th, the Republic of Korea became the 161st member of the United Nations. The two Koreas became members of the UN together back in 1991. And so this year, as we mark the 30th anniversary of Korea's membership to the UN, we decide to mark the occasion by conducting a special interview on Zoom In. We'll be speaking with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs International Organizations Bureau Deputy Director General Park Jang-ho. From his office at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here in Seoul, we connect with him. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
And thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with us. I hear you have a hectic day ahead.
Well, yes, thank you for having me. Glad to speak with you this morning.
All right. First and foremost, this seems to be a celebratory occasion as well as a significant one. Our listeners and I would absolutely appreciate learning more about how the membership process unfolded and why it took so long after Korea's initial relationship with the UN began back in 1948. So what is the significance of Korea's membership in the UN?
Well, our relationship with UN can be traced back to the very founding of the modern Republic of Korea. Back in 1948, the UN General Assembly passed a resolution establishing what's called a UN Temporary Commission on Korea, UNCOP, to supervise a general election in Korea, which became the very first election in Korea ever held in the aftermath of Korea's independence from the Japanese colonial rule. And it was through this election that representatives were elected who drafted the constitution of the republic. It was through this constitution the first president was elected and the government was organized. Mm-hmm. But however, the founding of the government did not automatically mean that Korea would become a member of the UN. In fact, although the Korean government sent official delegations to successive meetings of the UN, the international community couldn't come to a decision whether to admit Korea as its member. Why? Because soon after the founding of the government in Seoul in August 15, and as you know, August 15 is being celebrated still to this day as our Independence Day. Mm-hmm. On September 9th of the same year, there was an announcement that another government was founded, this one based in Pyongyang. Mm-hmm. And the problem was both governments claimed to represent Korea.
Both Koreas.
Yes. Mm. And what followed was a long and protracted story of intense global diplomatic rivalry between the two Koreas. South Korea was backed by the United States and the Western world on the one hand, and on the other, North Korea was back then Soviet Union and the Communist bloc. Mm. So over the next 42 years, the two Koreas competed to gain entry into the UN while blocking the effort of the other. Mm. And only in 1991, this rivalry finally came to an end, with both Koreas being admitted to the UN at the same time. This marked a significant historical moment, not only for the two Koreas, but for the entire world as well, because it well represented the beginning of the end of what was known as the Cold War.
Which actually, I think, naturally brings us to our question about the North Korea, because it was such a fierce competition between two countries to get, to represent Korea in the United Nations. At the onset of the entry into the UN, many around the world may have thought or even assumed that the membership to the UN together was a positive step towards maybe reunification. Here we are in 2021, 30 years later, marking an important day. We're still a divided nation. So what do you see as the future of South Korea's relationship then with North Korea?
Well, certainly when the two Koreas joined the UN as its full member, both Seoul and Pyongyang pledged to abide by the Charter of the United Nations, which is to seek and contribute towards maintaining international peace and security. Also, on the day that we were officially admitted, representatives of both Koreas, both South and North, addressed the UN General Assembly, speaking about a future where there will be one, not two, Korea represented in the United Nations soon. As you said, 30 years later, that aspiration still remains as aspiration, and here we are still a divided nation. But We are still seeking to achieve peaceful resolution of the problem. As you know, President Moon Jae-in's peace process initiative culminated in a series of very historic meetings between and among the leaders of the two Koreas and the United States. And through these meetings, there is some very basic understanding that we would work towards achieving complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula through peaceful and diplomatic means.
Right.
And although these kind of diplomatic dialogues always have its ups and downs, we remain hopeful that this effort will yield a positive result for the good of everyone on the Korean Peninsula and beyond.
Which is why there's a lot of eyes and emphasis on President Moon's final speech at the UN General Assembly next week. It may be too early on for us to assume what might be said, but do you know what he may say in his speech? If you can disclose the information with us.
Well, I wouldn't want to give out the spoiler of the very important speech, but all I can say is it will mark President Moon Jae-in's fifth presence at the UN General Assembly and, as you know, his last as the president. So I am sure that he will try to present to the world his own view of the state of the affairs of the international and global community, as well as the achievement of what he made on the Korean Peninsula peace process.
Deputy Director General Park, because we are marking an important day, the 30th anniversary of Korea's membership to the UN, I think it's an appropriate time for us to ask, now that we do have 30 years under our belt, so to speak, what is ahead for Korea's role in the UN and the international community? Do you think because our economy, cultural contents, and even influence all seem to have upgraded in the last 30 years, so we need to play perhaps a bigger role in the worlds of the global community?
Yes. Well, in commemoration of the 30th anniversary of our entry into the UN, the Republic of Korea is more committed than ever to addressing global challenges together and reinvigorating multilateralism. And it is in this vein that President Moon Jae-in will attend the general debate of the 76th session of the General Assembly and marking his fifth consecutive participation, and to determine and to renew Korea's firm determination to strengthen global solidarity and inclusive multilateralism. Particularly, South Korea is committed to redouble our efforts in the field of maintaining international peace and security through such as UN peace operations, non-proliferation and disarmament, counterterrorism, and cybersecurity, protecting human rights and democracy both at home and abroad, addressing humanitarian needs through providing humanitarian assistance, and also addressing the very important global issue of refugees. As you know, Republic of Korea have accepted and brought a number of
Afghan evacuees.
Afghan people who have helped us over the past 20 years in our involvement in Afghanistan. And promoting sustainable development, including through 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, climate change, and the Green New Deal. And finally, of course, leading the international efforts to cooperate to address this very important and difficult challenge of dealing with COVID-19.
It seems that you have a lot of big agendas at play. Because we are marking the 30th anniversary, I do want to ask a pretty loaded question. In the last 30 years, I'm sure South Korea's foreign ministry has also achieved a lot, but what are some noteworthy achievements that you've noticed that Korea may have experienced in the past 30 years as one of the member nations at the UN?
Well, over the 30 years of our membership, Korea has deepened relationship with the UN, making vast contributions to the UN's efforts to foster peace, promote human rights, and eradicate poverty. Korea has served on almost all principal organs of the UN, including, of course, the Secretariat, with Secretary General Ban Ki-moon serving 2 terms, lasting 10 years at the helm of the Secretariat. Also, the General Assembly, our former Prime Minister Han Seung-soo served as the President of the General Assembly, as well as the Security Council and the Economic and Social Council. And this is a rare feat for any member state in the UN system. Korea has steadily increased our share in terms of the UN and peacekeeping operations budget, We are, by any measure, one of within the top 10 contributors of the UN budget. Furthermore, Korea has enthusiastically participated in endeavors to strengthen the nexus between humanitarian assistance, development, and peace, while increasing the volume of our official development assistance. And so, in my view, Korea's greatest achievement as a member state of the UN is that it became the representation of what can be achieved with the help of the international community. Korea's dramatic rise from poverty-stricken, war-torn, aid-receiving country to the economic powerhouse with vibrant democracy gives hope to all nations that with adequate help and willingness, really anything is possible.
And now that the roles have been reversed, perhaps South Korea would be more inclined to contribute back to all those UN initiatives you previously mentioned.
Yes, that is what we are willing to do, and that is the task that we confront towards next 30 years at the UN.
Do you have any additional messages you would like to share with our Good Morning Seoul listeners this morning?
Well, marking the 30 years of membership at the UN, it would be worthwhile to note that it is not only a historical moment for Korea, but also for the UN and the international community as a whole. As I said, this is a wonderful story of coming of age, progress for good, and hope for a positive future. And I think marking this occasion, all Koreans from all walks of life have every right to be proud and renew our determination to step into the role, a leadership role in the greater international community.
Thank you very much, Director General Park. It is my understanding that our listeners would walk away a little bit more, with a better understanding of Korea's role in the United Nations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. This morning we spoke to the Minister of Foreign Affairs International Organizations Bureau Deputy Director General Park Jang-ho. If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.